Good morning. I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking about the lingo, terminology that matters to you, both as possibly a shopper or maybe you've already got an EV or a newbie with it and you've got some terminology that's confusing you. The inspiration for this presentation come from my own personal experience of one day doing a web search for EV dictionaries. And I found that them all kind of almost sort of useless. Long lists of terminology in no context at all. A lot of terminology almost irrelevant to us as consumers. But the bigger problem was just no real context to it. So what I thought I'd do is make, in effect, a small dictionary of some of the critical terms and try to put them in context to help you both with your shopping experience as well as your driving experience. Bit of context, my name is Danny Brasic. I drive, that's Everett. It's an early Volkswagen ID4, their series. Everett is our road tripping car. 20,000 miles, driving around 7 different states, all the way out to Minnesota. Mostly road tripping because we live in the city. And so during the week, it doesn't get used that much. I've also had probably a couple thousand miles experience driving Model Ys and Teslas that I've rented around the country occasionally. So again, heavy experience on my older model, ID4, 22 in this case, German built, and a couple of Teslas. Quick little etiquette issue here. If you have any questions, wait to the very end. Since I'm the first presenter, it's up to me to keep everybody, at least get them started on time. So I need to finish exactly 11:30 with everything, questions and all. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about charging much. There's a presentation at noon that's all about charging, but I do need to get a little bit of a kind of a baseline here, a basic understanding of some of the charging, make sure everybody understands charging. So with an EV, you're going to plug it into charge, of course. And you've got 3 different types of chargers that you might be engaged with. On the left, we call it level 1. If you look and squint, you'll see that there's a normal 110 AC plug on the end of that cord. It's kind of small, unfortunately, but just if you squint, there's a normal AC outlet like you'd have on any appliance at home. That's level 1. Level 2 is you don't see the actual cord. You usually get a box that you hang on your wall. It may be in your garage, it may be in a hotel, maybe at a shopping center, or your offices, whatever it is. That's known as level 2. Now again, if you kind of squint and look at the level 1 and level 2 and the charger port that plugs into the car, they're identical. They both use the same kind of connector into the car. And the lingo it's called a J1772. Sorry, that's just the standard, and it became known as the J1772 connector. So you might see that phrase a lot. It just refers to level 1, level 2. The one we're going to hit most in my presentation is DC fast charging. That's what you do on road tripping. The level 1, measure the charging time, honestly could be in days if your battery is empty. Level 2, you measure your charging time in hours, 6, 8, 9, 10 hours, depending on how empty your battery is. DC fast charging, you measure the charging time in minutes. That's the fundamental distinction, is just this is what you do on road tripping because it's fast. Level 2, you do that at home, garage, or whatever it is. DC fast charging also is sometimes known as level 3. Some people say, no, that's wrong. I don't care. But the reason they kind of disagree that it's level 3 is that the first 2 are AC power. This is DC power, so they're fundamentally different. AC for alternating current, like a house has, DC for direct current. You want some fun history, Thomas Edison thought the whole country should have been direct current, and he was advocating direct current. I think it was JP Morgan said, no, we're going to do AC. He won. But now with EVs, direct current's back. Stick with DC fast charging. When you go to use a DC fast charging station in North America today, there are essentially 2 types of stations. And they're all fundamentally the same. The chargers are all kind of fundamentally the same, but their connectors to the car are different. On the left, you have what's sort of the global standard. And it's known somewhat incorrectly as CCS. It's really CCS1. But it looks like that on the left. And that's kind of the global standard and common in North America. On the right is what Teslas use, and that's known as NACS or NACS, or North American Charging Standard. Okay, both do DC fast charging. This was originally made on the right, the NACS for Teslas, of course, and the one on the left was made for everybody else, of course. So that right there, you think, well, is that dichotomy, is that good for me as a consumer? Maybe, maybe not. The key point to take away from the day, though, is a new word called adapters. The North American market, and only North America, has decided to essentially do away with the split and standardize on the NAC standard on the right. The rest of Europe and the country and the world will stick with the left, but North America is going to go with the one on the right. And you might think, does that mean I can't charge my car at both sets of stations? Well, no, you can. They're all providing these adapters, which is essentially just changing the pin configurations to match. They're just pass-through. They're very passive, just pass-through. They just change the pin connections. And they work fine because underneath the charging hood, if you will, underneath the station charging box, it's all the same. The only thing real different is the connectors. So these connectors are being distributed by the manufacturers, which allow, like you see in this picture here, on the left, Electrify America station, CCS type station. There's a Tesla charging. They're in the foreground, that white car. On the right here, we have a Mustang charging and a Tesla station. So for you as a consumer, what this means is that you now have effectively double the number of places to charge, regardless of whether your car is a Tesla or whether your car was a Ford, a GM, a Kia, a Volkswagen, whatever. You can charge it up anywhere. And furthermore, the newer cars are starting to come equipped with the NAC connectors, but they give you an adapter to charge at the CCS station. Or some of them are even putting both plugs in their car. So you don't care, you don't need the adapter, you just plug in the type of connector that's available. But this is a discussion that you'll hear a lot about, and you'll hear some consternations like, oh, there's so many more Teslas than CCSs and blah, blah, blah. The reality is there are more CCS stations than Tesla stations, but Tesla stations are bigger, so they have more charging ports, but there are more physical places to go charge with a CCS. But all that, again, you can just kind of ignore because it's all sort of merging together one happy little family through these little adapters that are being provided. I do need to point out this kind of adapter, though, this kind of connector. Connector. There was an old Japanese standard known as, and I think it's pronounced Chattamo. I've always been a little confused about that. It reportedly means time for a cup of tea, as a translation. The original model Nissan Leafs use these Chattamos. The newer ones do not, and I don't know the body line on the years. You might want to pay attention to Chattamo versus CCS if you're in the used car market. If you're in the used car market and you're looking at older Leafs and you think you might be charging away from home, like at a DC fast charging station, then you need to be aware that the Chattamo type charger, the blue one on this side, those are going away. Electrify America stations, the original ones, would give you a single station or single pole with both types of connectors. The blue ones are going away. And so you're rapidly losing DC fast charging stations for the original model Nissan Leafs. Maybe you don't care because you're never going to charge away from home. You're just going to use it for groceries and commuting. And you're going to do AC charging for all your charging. But if you think you may ever need to do DC fast charging, then you need to kind of be aware of that split going, of that type of charging adapter going away. So when we buy electricity, what are we buying? How do we measure what we're buying? We're not buying gallons of electricity, obviously. We're buying kilowatt hours. And I think the best way to explain what it is you're buying as an EV owner is to just use some analogies with some household appliances and stuff. So on the left, we've got just an ordinary 14-watt LED bulb. When you flip the switch and that LED turns on, it wants instantly 14 watts of power to light up. If you run the thing for an hour, you light it up for an hour, you're going to use 14 watt hours of energy. That's what Portland General Electric, for example, will bill you for. They'll bill you for 14 watt hours of energy. Scale it up to a pizza oven. I've got a pizza oven rated at 1,600 watts. When I first flip the switch and turn it on, it wants instantly 1,600 watts from Portland General Electric. If I cook a lot of pizzas, I run it for an hour, 1,600 watt hours of electricity I will buy from Portland General Electric. Now we often take the watt hours and divide them by 1,000 to get a smaller number. So it's really 1.6 kilowatt hours of energy that I will buy from Portland General Electric. Okay? Electric vehicles are kind of similar, but there's a fundamental difference in how this works with an electric vehicle. When I flip the switch on my light, for example, or my pizza oven, for example, I just assume that the electricity will be there from Portland General Electric. In effect, as a consumer, Portland General Electric has infinite supply of electricity. I don't worry about, is it gonna work or not? But if I got an electric vehicle, my electricity is coming from a battery, and that battery is not infinite. It's got a certain capacity. And that capacity is usually described in kilowatts. My electric vehicle, my ID4, comes with a 77 kilowatt battery, which equates to 77 kilowatt hours of energy usage. Now my motor is the thing that's gonna draw the electricity, and my motor averages about 0.3, about a third kilowatt hours of energy to drive 1 mile on average. So I've got a fixed capacity in my battery. At 0.3 kilowatt hours per mile, I can go 256 miles on a full charge, 0 to 100%. If you look up the specs on an ID4, my particular model ID4 and the year it came out, you'll get, that's about its EPA rating. And that's where that's coming from. So as a consumer, that seems might seem a little confusing and intimidating. The cars make it easy. So this is a view of what's called the cockpit in my ID4. That's a phrase that Volkswagen uses. In a gasoline car, we've got a fuel gauge. And it measures the gallons in your tank, and E for empty, F for full, half, quarter, or whatever. Electric vehicles tend to take the sort of iPhone approach and give you the percentage of the battery that's available. And that's known as the state of charge. SOC is abbreviated often, state of charge. So when I snapped this picture, my battery was at 40% of state of charge, 40% of the battery is available to use. Gasoline car has drive to empty value typically, so does electric car. This particular point in time, I was at 98 miles before I was empty, and empty, 0% state of charge on my battery. That comes from the fact that I was averaging over the past 20 miles, that top right number, 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. Now notice how I flipped the numbers around. Previous slide, 0.3 kilowatt hours per mile. Over here, 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. It's the same thing, just that this is more accessible to me because, we're all, I'm 65 years old. I got 50 years of driving behind me in a gasoline, or what is it? Less than that, actually, because I've had an electric car for a few years. I'm just used to miles per kilowatt hour. So you can flip it around and display it either way. But the point is, though, over the past 20 miles, I've been driving and averaging 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. And with 40% battery left, that means I got 98 miles left before I'm empty. So it's very analogous to a gasoline car, the way they're presented, just that the magnitude of the numbers is different. I'm used to, I replaced a Prius with our ID4. So I'm used to numbers like 45 and 46 miles per gallon. So the magnitude of the numbers is different, but it's the same thing. The better mileage I'm getting, the bigger the 3.4, 3.8, 4, whatever. Or the less efficient I'm driving, 2.8, whatever. So, but it's the same basic concept. And that's the thing to take away. It's just the same concept, but just order of magnitude is different for the efficiency or the consumption number. So particularly if you're out shopping for a car, you might hear this phrase called preconditioning. Life would be great if everybody used the term preconditioning for this. It's all the same technology, but as I put it, the marketers stuck their heads into the problem and started using different terminologies. So in the Tesla world, you'll hear this concept called preconditioning. And in social media, you'll see references to preconditioning. Go to a Volkswagen or a GM car, they'll say DC fast prep charging. If you're in a Ford, they're gonna call it en-route preconditioning. If you're in a Kia, they're gonna call it battery preconditioning. It's all preconditioning. It's just the marketers got involved. The one caveat is if you're in, not my Volkswagen, but a newer Volkswagen, I think Volkswagen says preconditioning means preheating the cabin. So, but really we're talking about preconditioning from a point of view of charging an electric vehicle, okay? So electric vehicle batteries, the traction batteries, they're kind of picky. They have their sort of happy place in terms of temperature. They don't like to be too hot. They don't like to be too cold. If they're too cold and you pull into a DC fast charging station to charge up, they will take longer to charge because the battery is just cold and there's some physics involved and the battery absorbs electricity at a slower rate. To counteract that, there's this technology called preconditioning, which is essentially HVAC for the battery. And it will warm up the battery to its sort of sweet spot so that when you plug into the DC fast charger, you'll charge it at a much higher rate, and possibly the car's sort of optimal maximum rate for charging. As a shopper, maybe you care, maybe you don't care. My ID4 is old enough that I don't have preconditioning in mine. It just calls it thermal management, but it's not really preconditioning. There's no heater to drive to warm up the battery. I don't really care. And the reason is in the wintertime, and this will be, like a shopping decision for you as to whether preconditioning means anything. In the wintertime, we just drive around here. We don't do long distance road trips. We might go to Seattle, we might go to San Juan Island. It's 40 degrees, maybe it's 32 degrees. I mean, there's one charging stop from here to Seattle that we might have to make on the coldest day in the wintertime. Otherwise, we just go straight through to Seattle, okay? So for us, not doing a lot of long distance winter driving in the wintertime, we don't care if we have preconditioning or not. On the other hand, if you do a lot of skiing and you're out to Mount Hood or down to Sisters or going to Idaho, you're doing a lot of long distance driving in the wintertime, preconditioning can save you possibly 15 minutes at a charging stop. So it might be important. Do keep in mind though, that preconditioning does not apply to AC charging, the level 1, level 2 that you might do at home. It's totally irrelevant. It's just DC fast charging that preconditioning applies. So again, if you're used car shopping, maybe you want to pay attention to it, maybe you don't care. Most new cars have preconditioning nowadays. If I was to buy a new EV, I'd probably get preconditioning, but we've been living fine without it for over 2 years. High voltage architecture. You see this in some certain advertisements for certain electric vehicles. Maybe you care, maybe you don't care. This is what my Volkswagen looks like under the cabin. This is the chassis on an electric vehicle. The black thing in the middle, that's the battery pack. It's like, I want to say thousands of cells. That's all battery. Mine's a rear wheel drive Volkswagen. So on the back of the car, I have a drive motor, single electric motor. If I had the all wheel drive dual motor, I'd have another battery in the front. Or excuse me, another motor in the front. I don't in mine. That's what it looks like. That's the propulsion system of an EV. Now you can wire that up to run at 400 volts, or you can wire it up to run at 800 volts. It's choice of the engineers. On paper, 800 volts is better, cheaper to make, and more efficient to operate, and faster to charge. I don't know why. I studied databases and economics in college. I have no idea why one's better than the other from an engineering perspective. If you're buying a Volkswagen, a Ford, a Tesla, a GM, I think they're all 400 volts. That's kind of the norm. 800 volts is in some ways kind of I don't want to call it the hot new thing. It just advertises more advanced. Kias will advertise it, Audis, Porsches that will advertise 800 volt architecture. Should you be shopping for a car that has 800 volts versus 400 volts? Do you really care? First of all, from a consumer perspective, it only relates to DC fast charging. It has no impact on your level 1, level 2 charging at home. If you're doing a lot of road tripping and your car has preconditioning and you're going to have a lot of DC fast charging stops, then 800 volt architecture might save you 10, 15 minutes of charging stop. So like me, I'm jumping across to Minneapolis a week from Monday in my old ID4. Preconditioning, or excuse me, the higher voltage architecture might be a little helpful on that trip because it does involve multiple charging stops a day for several days. But if that's not you, if the electric vehicle you're buying is intended to be just around town for 99% of the time, you don't get a lot of benefit out of the 800 volt architecture. So shop for the car that you want necessarily then, oh, I got to go to the 800 volt. Unless that's just your thing. You want the most engineeringly correct, whatever. Little kind of dull, but this is a distinction with electric vehicles versus gasoline cars. In a gasoline car, you never ever hear about the cabin heater. I know. You never hear about the cabin heater. Gasoline cars they're so inefficient with their use of gasoline that there's a tremendous amount of waste heat that they heat the cabin for free, effectively. Electric vehicle, you don't have that wasted energy. So you need, and the only source of energy you have is the big traction battery, really. So you're going to be using electricity to heat your cabin in the wintertime. Now, there are two types of technology in use. One is just, resistance heating. like a room heater. It's the same basic technology. Or you have heat pumps. Obviously, it doesn't look like that in your car, but it's a heat pump, just like you might have on your house. So you have two different choices when you go to shop and buy a car. Resistance heating uses more electricity than heat pump. And remember that electricity is coming out of the traction battery. So the more electricity you're using to heat your car, the less you have available for driving. So in principle, you always want a car with a heat pump because it just is more efficient, uses a lot less electricity. But do you care? Maybe, maybe not. My old ID4 has resistance heating. Hasn't stopped us one bit. Our winter driving is to Seattle or San Juan or down to Salem or down to Eugene, just not that cold. It has some impact on range, I'm sure. I never paid attention. We do our normal driving, just like we always do. If I was to go skiing a lot, go to Sisters, Idaho, and I'm in really cold weather for long periods of time, then I might really care about the greater efficiency with the heat pump. But again, it's one of those things, depends. What is your situation? Do you really care? If I was to buy a new car today, I would get a heat pump. Chances are most new cars in a couple of years will all have heat pumps. But again, it doesn't affect me. So, and maybe for your situation, for buying a used car, you don't really care. But just be aware of that distinction between that, you don't think about it with gas, you do with electric. And then one last thing, and this is a little bit of a pet peeve with me. There's a terminology you may have heard about, one pedal driving. Some people think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Some people, like me, don't care. Electric vehicles have a thing, and there's a new term for you, regenerative braking, abbreviated regen. And what that means is when you take your foot off the gas and or apply the brakes, the energy required to stop the car is captured and converted to electricity and pushed back into the battery. So it's a little bit of a recovery process with this regenerative braking. Now, there are a couple different ways to implement regenerative braking, or multiple ways actually. Teslas do full-on aggressive regenerative braking. So when you're driving and you're up and down on the gas pedal, as soon as you relax on the gas pedal, regenerative braking kicks in hard and it slows you down dramatically. And there's no way to change it. That's just the way they ship the cars. It's fun in the mountains of West Virginia when you're just winding around roads and you're just up and down, never touch the brake pedal until you come to a stoplight or a stop sign. It doesn't replace a brake pedal. That's why you still have a Tesla's two pedals, because you still need that brake. And that's where I get the pet peeve. One pedal driving doesn't mean you don't need the brakes. You still need the brakes because it won't come to a complete stop in a lot of cases. Very first time I rented a Tesla, I had believed the hype about one pedal driving, and I nearly rear-ended somebody at a stoplight. I was waiting for the car to stop, and it didn't. Fortunately, I hit the brakes in time. Now, the different manufacturers implement regenerative braking and one pedal driving differently. My Volkswagen wanted a car that was good and happened to be electric. So when I take my foot off the gas and off the pedal and my ID4, it just coasts. And that car will coast like you wouldn't believe. It doesn't engage regenerative braking until I hit the brake pedal. So that's another way to do it. So Tesla full on all the time, very aggressive. By default in my Volkswagen, not engaged until I hit the brakes. I can toggle it on or off in my Volkswagen. But it's probably half the degree of aggressiveness as a Tesla. But if you go look at a Ford, a Kia, I think probably any other model, they give you dial-in effect. Dial that aggressiveness of regenerative braking up. And so when you're shopping for a car and they're talking about regenerative braking and one pedal driving, now you know some questions to ask them. Well, can I change the degree of regeneration? Can I drive with one pedal or not? Just keep in mind, one pedal means you still need a brake, and you still have a brake. All right, that's what I got. Any questions?
Doesn't the charger plug talk to the car?
Yes. And that's why these adapters are just pass-throughs, because the communication technology, which actually is called CCS, Tesla uses the same thing as Electrify America, as EVgo. They all use the same software, if you will, the same technology inside the boxes. So it really is just a different kind of connector.
My charger died, and then I read the specs on it. It's 120 volts in, 15 amps in.
Yeah.
the exact same thing out. So why do I need this electronic box in between?
Well, you've got, so when I talk about the adapters, that's DC fast charging. If I've got level 1 charging, just a normal AC outlet charging, yeah, you're right. It's 110 volts, 15 amps, kilowatt an hour typically. There is a box in the middle. I honestly don't really know what it does, other than maybe it's a power conditioning device. But the level 2 charging, the better person to ask would be the noon presentation on charging. The one I have at home, it's a dumb charger. It's actually in my high-rise condo. It's a dumb charger. I plug in and it starts to charge. It doesn't do anything other than it communicates with the nearby chargers to make sure that 2 of us are charging at the same time. It doesn't overload the circuit. So there's some balancing. That's me in a high-rise garage with 40 chargers in that garage. House, I don't know. Maybe ask at noon. Brian, maybe you know?
So the question was, what is the box actually saying?
Yeah, what does that box do for level 1 AC charging or level
On
2
level
AC
1,
charging?
nothing, because the wattage is so low that the car handles it all on board. When you're doing more fast charging, the car is going to talk to the station so it can pull the most safe. So it's really just telling you how much I can accept, while the station is telling you, here's the most I can give you. So it's a bit of a tool of trade. Yeah.
Yeah, and like for me, I moved in this condo just by chance. My parking spot that I bought had a charger from the previous owner. I honestly don't know a lot about it, just that it works.
So is it the car, or is it the unit that's switching it from
AC to DC car?
Yeah,
That's the car.
AC.
That's the car. The car has an inverter that will convert AC to DC, or if it's DC fast charging, it just takes it direct. There's no conversion. But the inverter is in the car. And that's actually why some EV cars allow you to do things like plug a little, cooktop into your charging point. Because the cooktop is AC. There's an inverter that converts the DC power out of the battery to AC with the cooktop. There's out in the parking lot, you'll see some people have little cookers plugged into their cars. What else? Who's 11:30?
Me.
Oh,
Yeah. We're doing all right.
anything else I'm packing up? And while Brian's plugging in?
Quick thanks for him for taking his time to tell me information.